And here we go. Time for the hot topic of the hour. President Biden hitting the campaign trail in Wisconsin today. He is refusing to step aside, despite mounting concerns about his fitness. Biden admitting his failure on the debate stage in a radio interview with Earl Ingram. Listen to this.
I had a bad night. And the fact of the matter is that, I screwed up. I made a mistake. Look, I came back I was in a situation where I was wired. I didn't have a good debate. That's 90 minutes on stage. Look at what I've done in 3.5 years.
Well, this is President Trump is challenging Biden to a higher stakes debate, writing on X, "I have the answer to the crooked Joe Biden incompetence puzzle. Let's do another debate, but this time no holds barred. An all-out discussion with just the two of us on the stage." Biden met with a group of Democrat governors at the White House on Wednesday night. He reportedly told them he needs to sleep more, work fewer hours, and not attend any events after 8 p.m. The New York Times is reporting that the governor of Hawaii in that meeting asked Biden about his health, and he said, quote, "Mr. Biden replied that his health was fine. It's just my brain." Joe, some in the room reportedly thought that this was a joke, but others had very apparently stern looks on their faces and were very concerned and did not think that that was funny at all.
It would be a really funny joke if he was in full, cognitive ability and he made a joke about his age, about how his brain is going. The problem with this is that this is one of those jokes that's partially, if not entirely true. I think the Biden campaign is in the throngs of its death rattles right now. It's only a question of whether Joe Biden is the nominee today or whether he simply loses the election. You can't be in this catch-22 where you are in such poor mental health, where the best defense for you is to tell people that you're going to only work part-time. You wouldn't give your nephew the advice of telling some job interview he's at to go tell him you're going to sleep more, work less, and just mail most of it in. You wouldn't give anyone that advice to go to a job interview. And yet here you have Joe Biden on essentially an interview with the American public telling us he's going to be a part-time POTUS.
And the poll numbers have fallen, Jerry, exponentially since the debate, whether it's the New York Times polling or the Wall Street Journal poll. We'll get into that. But he made a number of mix-ups yesterday, Jerry. He had this 4th of July speech at the White House. Watch this.
I've been all over the world with you. I've been in and out of battles anyway. We met with American veterans, some of them about 12 or 14 over 102 years old. I was in that World War I cemetery in France. And the one that one of our colleagues, the former president, didn't want to go and be up there. I probably shouldn't even say it anyway.
This afternoon, reports reveal the president did have a medical checkup following that disastrous debate, which administration officials said, well, he has a cold. White House stated he was seen to check on his cold and was recovering well. But remember, KJP, Jerry, told reporters who were asking about this, the president had not been seen by a doctor since February. And the Washington Post is even now penning this hypothetical withdrawal speech for the president titled, "What if Biden spoke these words?" Here's what they write. "My season of service is nearing its close. This was a hard truth to face, but it is the natural course of things." This is not a real speech from Biden. Remember, everybody, it's an opinion piece from the Post. Your reaction, Jerry?
I have to tell you, this is simply astonishing, and I think we're headed into the teeth of a constitutional crisis over this, because ignore whether he's making mistakes or not, which is not what it is in the first place. What's the reality of the situation, and what do we need to do, and how do we get there? Those are the questions we're facing now. I think Biden is acting as if this is a test of his resolve. It's not a test of his resolve. It's a test of his mental fitness, and unfortunately, he's not the best person to answer that question. Just this week, for the first time, I heard a mainstream media reporter in the White House press conference ask, do we have a test of the president's brain? Do we know his cognitive impairment? That's the kind of information we need right now. That's what we need to know. And I don't see it coming from this White House.
Well, and also, John, if you look at the Wall Street Journal poll that came out on Wednesday, his issue, his cognitive issues, his physical issues aside, he also got incredibly low ratings when it came to policy, which is immigration, which is the economy. And voters are saying they don't like the performance they've seen on that side as well.
That is a very good point. And I and many others are under the impression that Joe Biden wasn't the one making these policy decisions. There were other people involved. I'd love to know who was running the show while Joe Biden was deteriorating mentally. And I think it's important for the Trump campaign to realize that in all likelihood, come November, they're not going to be running against Joe Biden. It's going to be somebody else, and they better be prepared.
Well, we have a lot to discuss this morning. There are many sides to this story, and a lot broke over the holiday.